So I just woke up and saw a comment, and I made some of the videos on the list just because I don't realize sometimes that other people, if you don't, if you haven't put yourself in the view of the most critical of the critical scholarship of the New Testament, and then basically climbed out of it, uh, see if you actually see if it was possible to climb out of it, if it was plausible, if it was likely, if it was stretching the truth, all those things, and then saying, yeah, uh, these are just, you know, I don't know how to describe it, but I'm worried that people might take what I say and run with it. But addressing it from the sola scriptura point of view, or thinking that you can't trust anybody in the first 300 years, looking at these things just from the dates given, or not even the dates given, just the looking at it super critically. Let's see. Do you think First Clement is a forgery? No. Serious questions. I thought that only letter of Peter that was in dispute was the second letter. Yeah, from a historical standpoint, that's right. But from critically looking at it, Peter couldn't have written those. But so the first one, we know that's the earlier one, and that was written professionally, so he might have used a script with that. And then the second one, he might have used, he might have learned Greek by that time, or he might have had Sylvanus write it, like it says in there. I don't think any of them from Peter. I don't think it almost sounds like somebody ripping off Paul and John, but I think it was from the traditions of Peter, which again I've explained the difference between how basically a forgery today would be authentic in the past, and what's authentic in the past would be seen as a forgery today. If I need to redo that video, I'll do it. That's fine. Which of the Pauline epistles do you consider unquestionably authentic? Again, this is getting to be a real problem. It's not what I think. It's the vast majority of scholarship. All of them except the pastorals and Ephesians and Colossians. So Romans, Second Thessalonians is that can be. I've seen scholars go both ways on that, but definitely Romans, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, Galatians, Philippians, 1 Thessalonians, Philemon. I wasn't counting those. I think those are if that's not 7, then take 2 Thessalonians to make it 7. In what ways do John and Matthew contradict each other? From a sola scriptura point of view, absolutely, in a lot of ways. From if you have these different groups of people writing, what would they naturally write? How much do they coincide? It actually amazingly coincides historically. I dislike Matthew, but I think we need it. And I think there's too many essential things in there to get rid of it. And it's not going to be a problem if you include Mark, Luke, and John as required reading. And you're going to see the Judaizing elements in it, and it's just going to bounce off you, which it does. But taking something like Matthew, where Cerinthus was able to twist it and screw around with it and create his own heresy. And something like John, why do you think Cerinthus picked Matthew? Because he was trying to piss off John. He was an enemy of John. As for the pastorals, I think 2 Corinthians I've read that scribes used, which doesn't necessarily. And I think 2 Corinthians. It's not the pastor. It's not the. I mean, a scribe wouldn't completely change theology and what's being said and what's emphasized, and completely change how the church should be ordered and view on marriage and all the stuff like that. But I think it's just because Paul got older and was like, yeah. And actually, I think you're right. Well, maybe no, though. I think that would have to be 1 Corinthians. I think Paul was probably a manic depressant. Because the way he writes, it's like sometimes he's screaming and whining, and then he can get very peaceful and sublime, and like this totally. I mean, I would say like the Buddha or something, but Paul is so much better than that when he's writing these very beautiful things like 13th chapter of Corinthians, and then you see him just screaming and ranting in Galatians, which I get pissed like that too. I understand that, but then he goes. I mean, he'll go into weird, like, it just seems odd, and scholars have noticed this, and they say that Paul has a couple different faces, a few different faces. When it depends on which audience he's talking to, which he probably did. Didn't mean he was some sneaky guy. I don't see the discrepancy between Galatians and Acts. Everybody tries to be a huge discrepancy between, and me, who tries to look for this stuff to say maybe there's a deeper level, because actually, the more discrepancies you can find in places, farther back you can go with the book to be 100% sure what happened. That's why I dig the discrepancies in the New Testament. They should be there. If these are if they're not just copying off each other, if they're actually coming from various points and they're talking about the same issue, but they're not talking to each other. That's again, you've got those are acting as independent witnesses, which is extremely helpful for a historical basis. Hebrews is debated, but there are a lot of early fathers use Hebrew. Yeah, Hebrews is used. Hebrews, I believe, for Clement of Rome quoted Hebrews, but it's not Paul. And the church didn't even think it was Paul. Paul's letters are arranged longest to shortest. And then you have the Catholic epistles. And Hebrews is intentionally straddling both of those, because it sounds like Paul, kind of. I mean, people could be forgiven for mistaking it for Paul. But they made sure to group it with they were very clever about that. They grouped it with the Catholic epistles, if you're talking about groupings. But it's meant to kind of straddle the Pauline works and the Catholic epistles. Maybe a PM, I'm pretty curious. Again, writing all this stuff out. I don't know if I can convey as much stuff, or even I would remember it, or if somebody has concerns, it's most likely, or questions, is most likely that other people are going to have those same questions. And especially, like, if not just something easily that I could just, write back, or if, sometimes I'll write back if my, it's something messed up with the video. But if I just do a video, then, especially if there's an Orthodox Christian that's got these questions, because I don't want to be misunderstood by any of my brethren. Alright, I hope that answers it for you. And when the video I said, questions for biblical literalists, warning, this may debunk your religion. The religion of biblical literalists. not Christianity, the imposter that calls itself Christianity.